This afternoon, 62-year-old Hector Gesso was brought into provincial court just hours after his release from custody. His arrest came after a police officer invoked a rarely used section of the criminal code and claimed they had reasonable grounds to fear that Mr. Gesso will commit a serious personal injury offense. The entire affair needed and received approval from the Deputy Attorney General. When Mr. Gesso was brought into court, he agreed to a number of conditions for his release. That included he use a monitoring device, abide by a curfew, abstain from consuming alcohol, and remain away from anyone under the age of 16. Mr. Gesso has a violent criminal past that includes rape and robbery. He had been serving a sentence until today for assault against a female. He's also required to remain away from Pooch Cove. Mr. Gesso, however, did not agree to having these conditions in effect for 2 years as requested. So a hearing will take place in late January to determine if he should remain under these conditions for 2 years. Mr. Gesso was released after agreeing to the conditions. Police admit this is a rarely used section of this. Now, St. John's man has been sentenced to a year in prison for threatening to burn the homes of the Premier, former Justice Minister, and the Chief of Police. 43-year-old Lloyd George Francis was in court to be sentenced for a letter he wrote from a prison in New Brunswick. Mr. Francis threatened to burn the homes of Premier Danny Williams, the former Justice Minister Tom Osborne, and the Chief of Police Joe Brown. He also threatened to burn down Confederation Building. The court heard that it was possible Mr. Francis made the threats so that he could be returned to this province from the jail in the Maritimes. But concerns about previous arsons and his sexual interest in fire trucks and sirens left the court with what it felt was a serious possibility of future incidents. Mr. Francis, who has diminished mental capability, was sentenced to a year in jail to follow his current sentence, which ends in nearly 2 years from now. The Crown had asked for a 3-year jail term.